everyone, and welcome to Skills for Mars Transitions. On this episode, I'm going to host Linda. When her senior executive role was restructured, she had to make a big decision. Continue and find a job in the corporate world, doing something that she already did, or doing something totally different. Join us as we embark on her transition journey. If you like this channel and would like to receive further career support and inspiration, consider subscribing. Every week, someone will share their incredible transition. And now I give you Linda. Hello, Linda, and welcome to Skills for Mars Transitions. I'm very happy to host you today.
Thank you. It's very nice to see you again.
Would you be okay for everyone to know you a bit, to introduce yourself, a bit of your background, and a bit of the journey you've been through as change? And then, of course, we will go into the details.
Oh, terrific. I would love to. So I'm American. I was born and raised in Missouri, which is in the central U.S., and I lived in St. Louis until I went to school in Chicago, which is not too far away. And in my 20s, I went back and forth between Chicago and St. Louis for university and for work. But I didn't really have any career plan. I basically just worked I had an interest in advertising and marketing. And so I worked in that and in retail and eventually moved back permanently to Chicago in the late 80s. So since then, I worked, I just answered an ad. And back then we had ads in the newspapers, no internet. But I answered an ad for a customer service representative job at a healthcare information company. And I had no background in healthcare, but an interest. And surprise, they hired me. So I started working in that area. I stayed with that company for about 7 years and learned a lot about healthcare and medical field in general. And that was my first position working in what we would say more of a technical than a creative field. So I learned a lot about data and analytics. And I went on from that to join another larger company that dealt in the same field, but more with consumers instead of business to business. And they brought me on board to start up their healthcare marketing area. But I was also working quite heavily with other industries like retail, packaged goods, financial services, travel, so forth. So I eventually ended up managing a whole team of people, did quite well at that company and stayed there. They were acquired by a British company that was looking to expand into the US. And so that was by the late 90s. And stayed with that company for about 10 to 12 years in a marketing capacity. But about 5 years in, they decided to form a global strategy group. And I was asked if I would come into that team and work on two key initiatives, which was digital innovation and global expansion beyond the UK and the US. So I did that for quite a while and went from basically a customer service rep to a corporate vice president by 2012 or so. So that was in like my 30s and 40s, and quite happily, just very satisfied with my career, the team of people that I worked with. I got to travel all over the world, which was a huge benefit. And so by about 2012, the company decided to disband that group and decentralize all of those activities. And so my department was dissolved, and I was given an opportunity to either move into an operational role, which I decided not to do, or to leave the company. And that's when I decided to change careers. But I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So,
were you thinking already for some time to switch to something else, or were you dreaming to do something else? Was it there in the back of your mind or not at all?
I think I always felt when I was working there, I always felt, well, if I leave, I'll just go I like what I do, but I want to do it for a product or a service that I was more passionate about in it, or an industry that I loved more. And so what was a surprise, though, is when I left the company, they offered me a severance package, but it was also included a non-compete clause for 5 years.
Yeah,
So
you
I
were in
was
a senior executive role, of course.
exactly, and I had a lot of access to private, sensitive information, and so I was basically prohibited from working almost in the same industry in any capacity for a long period of time. 5 years is quite a long time. If it had been 1 year, 2 years, maybe I would have, taken a long vacation, a sabbatical, and come back and done the same work. But with a 5 year non-compete, I thought, well, I think it's a good time to look at doing something else. And by that time, I was 52. And so I really thought, if I'm going to make change, I need to do it now. I can't wait another 5 or 10 years. I've got to be able um, to get the training and to develop the relationships and get some experience. And so I did a long time. I took about 12 to 18 months to decide where to go next. And I looked at a lot of different fields. And I worked with a coach to help me sort through what I was really interested in and what might be the next phase of my career.
How important was it for you to work with a coach and get the guidance?
I think it was critical. It was an outplacement service that was provided by the
Mhm.
company, so there was no cost to me. She was maybe a little bit older than me. She was maybe
Okay.
5 or 10 years older than me, so I think we had similar perspective.
Mhm.
And she was able to not only take me through a series of exercises and have me write out different things. But we went through personality tests and looked at not only what my experience would lend itself to, where I could transfer skills, but also what would motivate me going forward. And I think that was the key determining factor. Is I needed something that was going to really push me and motivate me, not just something I might be good at.
Did you end up with just one option, or did you have multiple options and then you somehow decided between them?
I actually looked at two or three different fields. I always wanted to do something in market development and innovation, new products, new services, new businesses. So I always positioned myself as the go to person for what's new and what's next. So, on top of trends and always being aware of consumer behavior and so forth, and where companies might want to invest next, whether it's by geography or by capability. Um, so I looked at things like real estate, I looked at interior design, I looked at retail, I looked at what I chose, which is the food industry. I looked at travel. So I really did pick areas that I
Quite.
had interest in. But I looked across 4 or 5, and one of the exercises that she had me do was not only get out and network and talk to people in those industries and in those particular jobs, but also write out a description of what kind of training and skill set do I need to be able to start in that. Understanding that I'm coming in as a junior in a totally new field.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you choose baking, cooking, the food industry?
Part of it was financial. I looked at some of the other fields and I thought I would have to go back and get an advanced degree, um, a master's, or probably not a doctorate, but at least a master's degree. I would have to be certified or credentialed in some way. The financial investment, I might have to move to a different area that might be more expensive. And so I really, it was a balance between the length of time and what my finances would allow. And so when I finally centered in on the food industry, I researched the question in the food industry for a lot of people is, do you go to culinary school or don't you? About half of the industry will, and the other half will succeed and get their training on the job in various roles in restaurants, catering, hotels, etc., um, and food product companies. But I thought two things. One, I knew I wanted to live and work internationally in the future. So I felt I needed some strong credentials and recognizable name. So I chose a school that had a strong international presence and still does. And they had an accelerated program where I could learn quite a bit in a short period of time. And so I didn't have to take out too much of a student loan or use up too much of my savings to get started. So those were the considerations, and that's why I chose that particular path.
You went about it very planned, right?
Yes.
And you're still on your journey. It's not over yet.
No, I'm about halfway through.
Tell us a bit about the plan and what's the end goal.
So one of the exercises that the career coach had me do was a 5-year plan for myself, because she said, you've spent the bulk of your early part of your career helping companies plan their long-term strategies, but you've never done it for yourself. She was right. And I thought, I really need to be more intentional about this. I had just, through luck or happy accident, fallen into great jobs over the years, but I had never intentionally gone after any of these with a plan. So that was also what took some time, was to sit down and say, okay, I need to, the first 5 years was going to be, and this was, I would say 2015 by now to 2020 to where we are about now. And it was all about, I need to get the classical training through culinary school. I need to develop a new contact network of people in the industry, perhaps a mentor, or certainly peers and other people who I could tap their knowledge and their resources. I need to gain some practical work experience. And, so that I thought that's going to take at least a few years to do. And that's where I am right now. So this past year, I have also been, and it's great during this lockdown time, I've had plenty of time to go through and review and update my plan for the next period of time, so 2020 through 2025. So I have a pretty clear path as to how I'm going to go about continuing in this space.
I can't help but notice that you are very secure and composed about all of this. It's a long time, it's not a short time. How did you manage with your finances, with your loan? What are you doing in the meanwhile to make sure that you can get to where you want, but have the security and live the life that at least part of the life that you want in the meanwhile?
So I did two things. Again, whenever you're looking at making a huge change, whether you're an individual or a company, you have to look at revenue growth. So how am I going to secure or save or have enough funds to see me through this period of time? And then on the operational side, how can I create efficiencies by cutting my costs? So how can I limit my spending so that you have that cushion in between? You're not living from paycheck to paycheck. My income, and this was the hardest thing to get used to. My income when I was working for a corporate career included not only my salary, but a bonus and investments, stock. And then, of course, I had my severance pay as well when I left. So I had a little bit of savings and some resources that I could get by for a few years. Once I started working, one of the things that I did in between culinary school and jobs was I traveled overseas, back to some of the places that I had worked previously, but also some new cities that I had heard about. And I realized that I could live much more efficiently at a much lower cost of living in certain cities than here where I am in Chicago right now. So, and that's my plan, is that long term, I will eventually move to one or more of those cities so that I could live on much less and make my money stretch further. So going forward, for this period of time, I actually had an inheritance that I've been able to live on and some help from family. And but going forward, it'll be through Social Security and savings and other, and I'll probably continue to work at least part-time as long as I can. No plans to fully retire.
When do you think you will get back to a normal situation, financially speaking and job speaking?
Financially, never.
Okay.
Because and that was a hard adjustment to make. Psychologically, that was the hardest thing. So I am making the average income in the food industry is 10 to 20% of what I used to make. So I took an 80% pay cut, 80, which is a lot. Uh, you basically go from living a very upper middle class or pretty well-to-do lifestyle to basic subsistence. And I had to be all right with that. That was a psychological adjustment that I had to really think about of, you are never going to make a lot of money anymore. And there are going to be periods where you don't make much at all, and it's going to really be a stretch. I'm fortunate in that I'm very healthy, so I don't have children or other people depending on me. So it's basically, can I adapt to this new lifestyle of living in a low-cost city in a small basic space with not a lot of extras? And it's okay. It's okay. I'm very happy with it. It's the trade-off with the stress level has been worthwhile. I'm much happier, much more content now.
You're definitely not a person motivated by money, right? I think that's kind of clear to anyone. What motivated you in this change?
I probably should be.
Are you not? What's motivating and what keeps you happy and focused? Because to have a 5-year plan and to go through it with such calm, such composure, such dedication, and with an 80% cut, right? Yeah. What keeps you at it?
I think just the love of the work. I try to put myself in an environment where it is working with a group of people, because food industry is a team sport. Whether you're in a restaurant or any other business, you can't do it alone. So, and the people that I work with are much younger. When I was in culinary school, there was only, out of a class of 40, there was one other woman in her 40s. Everybody else was teenagers, 20s, very young. But interestingly enough, out of that class of 40, only 8 of us made it all the way through. So a lot of people go into it and they wash out for whatever reason. They lose interest, their financing falls through, they have other life, things that they want to do. And so I just learned to persevere, and I really, really wanted it. And I knew that I didn't really have much of a choice. I couldn't go back to what I used to do, and I couldn't really start over in another field. So I thought, I would tell myself, and I still tell myself when times get tough, that I chose this, I want this, I can do this. And you have to really be your own best cheerleader.
So that's the morning mantra.
It is. It is. I want this, I chose this, I can do this.
Did it make you feel that you cannot do it, or did you question your decision when you saw that, hey, everyone is 18, 19, 20, wait, there's only one more person in the group that's 40, and I'm definitely the oldest person here? Did it make you question your decision?
No, it really didn't. Because the instructors were all about the same age as me. I had a few that were younger, but in the most case, they were experienced and had been in the industry for 20 or 30 years. My youngest instructor, my pastry chef instructor, was 26, but my oldest one was in his 60s. And this was his last job. He was going to retire after this. And so, I tried to develop relationships with everybody at the school and people in the industry, and people who were just starting to people who had been in it for a long time, because I really wanted to understand where do I fit here, and how do I add value in this space. I'm not going to be the fastest. I may not be the smartest or the most talented, but I certainly, I think, was the most dedicated and hardworking. and the best problem solver. I mean, I tried to, again, focus on the skills that I could transfer from my corporate career, and in terms of planning, preparation, looking at different ways to approach a problem and come up with different solutions. Um, just what can I bring to the team? And maybe at this point, how can I help some of those younger people get through the rough spots? I'm not necessarily a teacher, but I try to be a good example.
Did they come for your advice? Did they ask for support because you had more experience, or that was not the case?
Sometimes, I think most people who get into this industry have have a high level of confidence and a pretty big ego. Some people want to be an executive chef. They want to run their own show. Um, and people of all ages in this business are very strong-willed. There are no wallflowers, no shy people in this industry. And you have to have that. You have to have confidence, and you have to have um, some, type A personality, a go-getter kind of personality. You can't sit back and wait to be given a direction, because you come up with all kinds of problems, and people still have to eat. So the show must go on in the food world. Uh, but there's always something. It's equipment breaking, or ingredients are not the top quality that you need. Um, a team member is sick and they call off, they don't show up, and now you're shorthanded. Um, you know, there's always something going wrong, and you just have to kind of be very patient and look at this and be calm and say, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? Because the customer should never see all that. They came for a great night out and a great meal, and they're spending their hard-earned money, and they want to enjoy themselves. So they don't care about the rest of it, and they shouldn't.
So you were talking about finding your value add and where you fit in the industry. Did you decide, is it being a chef? Is it owning a restaurant? Is it managing a chain of restaurants and help them expand like you did with the previous IT company and using the previous skills? What is it?
I think physically, I know that I don't have the stamina anymore to work as hard as you need to be an executive chef or open your own restaurant. That's 7 days a week, 15 hours minimum every day. You're basically living at the restaurant. And in all honesty, I'm not that big a risk taker. I still like the security of having um, a large brand or company behind me. My dream job, I think, would be at this point starting up a brand or a division within a larger company. I think I still work very well in a corporate environment, and as long as it's something in the food industry that will keep my interest. So that's the phase where I'm at right now. I'm out talking to a lot of different people um, about different roles I could play, either on a project basis. I am working, our store is closed, our cafe is closed right now, but I'm working as a baker. So I'm getting more bakery operations experience than I had, and I didn't have a lot in school. In culinary school, there's two tracks. There's the cooking side, and there's the pastry side. So there's culinary and pastry. And you basically take the first couple of months and everybody learns the same thing, like food safety and sanitation. And then you go off into your different paths. So I did the culinary track, and now I feel like I'm doing the pastry track. So,
Okay.
so it's all valuable. And I have a lot more experience now in restaurant operations. Even if I don't want to do that full time, it's a great skill and great experience to have, because you never know when you might want to pick up a part-time job doing that as well.
How your coach asked you, and you just mentioned it at the very beginning, and I said that I will come back to it. How does it feel to be a junior again? To not have teams across different countries, travel the globe, and be an executive, senior executive for a large company. How does it feel to go back to square one, go back to school, and then be a junior?
I think when I was in school, it might have been more of an adjustment than it is now. Um, but keep in mind that when you're in school, everyone is basically new. Everyone is learning. Whether you are 20 or you're 50, you're still a newbie. So, and most of us had some practical restaurant experience, but culinary school is a more classical training, and so it's new for everybody. So I felt pretty much at the same level. If anything, was more driven because, again, physically, I felt like I needed to keep up, and I still feel that way. My stress is mostly physical. It's I don't want to show any sign of weakness. I don't want anyone to think that, oh, she's too old to handle this. So I don't take days off. I don't complain if I'm in physical pain. Uh, you know, you learn ways to just keep it to yourself, smile, and say, okay, what do you want me to do next? What do I need to get done now?
Do you
On
think
with the
this is
show.
part of the process of adapting to this new role and changing what you're doing, or is it more I can't be seen that I'm suffering?
Yeah,
It's more of a risk.
I think it also depends on the people that you work with. Again, in most of the positions that I've had, and I've worked in 3 or 4 places in the last 5 years, um, in every place, the people in the chefs primarily are strong. They are determined. They have a lot of stamina, and they don't show. You don't. There's, like they say, there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in food. But there were times I was doing a culinary externship in Barcelona, right at the end of my classical training, and through a friend, I was able to get this externship. I don't speak Spanish, and no one in the restaurant spoke English. So they basically had to show me, they had to demonstrate what they wanted me to do. But if you think of an environment where there's no verbal communication, you don't speak the same language, it's hard to learn. It's hard to ask questions in that environment. And there were a couple of days where I would go into the walk-in cooler and cry and think, I can't do this. I just can't do this. Um, but you do. You get through it and you say, well, I chose this. No one's forcing me to do this. I have this great opportunity. I'm working for one of the top restaurants in a great city. Um, how do I make this work? How do I get past this? And you just have to take a deep breath and move on.
Did you have any support from family, friends, or when you were crying on the phone from Barcelona, they said, nah, come back home. This is crazy. This is madness. You don't have to do it.
Well,
It's 5 years have passed.
yeah.
You can always get maybe a job back in the area that you worked before in.
Yeah, exactly. No, my friends were extremely supportive because everybody had said, I'm surprised you didn't do this sooner. I'd always loved cooking and baking, and I was always the person who was bringing, treats into the office and picking out a great restaurant for us to go to dinner and that kind of a thing. So it was always a hobby for me. And so the people that I work with were not surprised at all, and they were very supportive. My family was more concerned about my financial prospects. They were like, how are you going to support yourself? Um, there's no security. Most restaurants close after a year, that kind of thing. It's a very volatile industry, and there's not a lot of career opportunity there. So I think they have been, and probably still are, more concerned about the finances than anything else.
And now with the pandemic, I think it's hard. It's a big hit on the restaurant industry, on the food industry.
It is. In the city that I'm in, everything is closed with the exception of takeout, or delivery. There's no sit-down restaurants. And a lot of I was talking to a company recently couple of months ago before this started about working in their culinary innovation center and working on new product development. And they can't do that now because they can't have groups of people in the same place.
Hopefully this will be over soon, and then you can go back and continue the journey. But it's a good moment to recollect, think about, hey, am I on the right path? What am I doing next? And you're not just caught up in a mechanism.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to use this time for more continued learning. There's a lot of cooking classes online and a lot of industry events that have moved online. All the trade shows are canceled, but you can still do things like this and talk to people online. And so I'm trying to use that, one, to refine, again, where my place is in the industry, what do I really want to do going forward, and to develop the relationships and make those connections with people that I might want to work with in the future.
You are in the middle of the full transformation, in the middle of the journey. What are the biggest challenges right now?
That's a good question because, again, I've adjusted my lifestyle. So finances is okay. I mean, not going to go out and splurge anytime soon, but I can get by and it's okay. I work with a great group of people. The work that I do, I enjoy it. I look forward to going in the morning and or whenever, and the day goes by quickly, and I really like it. And I am continuing to learn things. I think the toughest part right now, again, is not knowing exactly where I am, because I don't want to work in the restaurant world forever. My ideal aspect would be to be able to somehow combine the skills and the experience that I developed in the corporate world in strategic planning, market research, business development, corporate acquisitions, investments, and so forth, innovation, with a company that is doing that or wants that type of a function in their organization in the food industry. So it's basically creating a job for yourself, creating the job description, because I'm not so sure it exists.
That works. That works, and it works magic. Once you find the right company, you just have to keep eyes open for the opportunity.
Yeah, and in particular, I want to work internationally. So, but the tail end of my career plan is to, within 2 years, by 2022 or 2023, I would like to, move out of the United States permanently. And I have a few cities from my travels that I think would be the right next environment for me.
Okay. Are they in Europe, Asia?
One in Europe and one in Asia right now.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
And
I think that's exciting.
Yeah, there's some. They will require me to learn some additional skills, like a new language. I don't speak a foreign language. So I'm looking at that going, this would be a good time for me to start learning that language now.
True.
So I have some time. Culturally, I know it's a fit. Financially, I know it's a fit. I mean, there are cities that I have spent more than a few months in over the years. And I haven't narrowed it down to one city. I've been working with or socializing with a couple of online communities that are expats and retirees who have moved overseas, mostly from the US or Britain or Australia to other places in Asia or Europe. And what factors into their decision? How do they manage it? Financially, tax-wise, health-wise, there's a lot of things to consider. And most of them are couples. So me being a single person, I also have to take into consideration, how does that change my picture?
It's good that you are very good at planning and thorough with analytics and knowing yourself and knowing where you are, and just taking it one by one, reflecting on it. So I think that seems to help.
I think planning and preparation are the key, both, again, in my former career, in this stage of my career, and in my future, but also having the flexibility. One of the things that I learned was, especially doing corporate acquisitions or innovation, is things don't always work out the way you think they will. So you have to have alternate plans. You have a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, and then maybe reality is somewhere in between there. But if you can plan for different outcomes, then you're prepared and you're ready. And it's not like you have to start over. You just have to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
But
And I
it's not
think
hard.
this is a very good advice, especially for someone who doesn't like risk very much. And then planning you can either do by yourself or you can get someone to help you. There are ways to be able to put that plan together.
Absolutely.
And then follow through.
Yeah. And the trade-off is peace of mind.
Yeah.
You don't have stress, you don't have the fear of, and you don't have the regret. You don't have, did I make the right decision? And should I stop now and do something else or go back? You just say, okay, it's not progressing the way I thought, but what can I do to veer off into a different direction or continue and get over this obstacle? You either go, around it, above it, or through it.
Yeah.
But you don't go backwards.
Maybe at some point, Linda, you can think about having a second kind of job in which you coach people who want to make this kind of transitions and they don't know how to make such a plan.
Like I said, I've never thought of myself as particularly good as a coach or a teacher, but I do have the tools. So, and there are actually some very specific, exercises. They're mental exercises, but there are templates and questions and quizzes and, all kinds of things and conversations that you have with other people. And that's something that I learned from the coach that I was working with. And I see it. There are a lot of online coaches. And I've looked at working with some of those. And I thought, well, so far, I think I can do this on my own now. But it also helps.
It's a mental exercise. That's it.
What helps a lot is to network and talk to people who have either been through it or who can empathize and understand, where you're at, and just talk through it. It's not something that I talk about with my family at all. And I don't talk about it with people that I work with. I don't want them to think that I'm looking to leave or change in any way. Although I've made my direction known to the people that I work with that I will be moving overseas at some point. It's not a forever thing.
Yeah. If you are to sum it and then summarize, two things that you would do the same, things that you would change if you look back and maybe you think, hey, I could have done better here. What would maybe be 3 things that you would do the same and 3 things that you would change?
Well, doing the same, I definitely would pick this industry. I picked something I really love. It continues to motivate me and make me want to work hard. I would continue along the path of living efficiently and in a portable way. I owned a house once for 20 years and I sold it, and I'll never own another house again. I know I have the confidence and the ability to live out of a suitcase. I don't need a lot of fancy things anymore. And that someone once told me that when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you spend that time acquiring things, and in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, getting rid of all those things.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's true. I'm just getting rid of everything now. And so the last thing I would do the same is I traveling and living in different cities and seeing how little it really costs to live on. It was just such a shock to me. And when I came back to America, quite a sticker shock as to, wow, it's pretty expensive here. Um, but knowing that, I'm confident that I can live on even less than I'm living on now. And I can get used to living in a foreign country, and it's just fine. Just fine with me. Things I would do differently are all financial. I would have saved a lot more when I was younger and I was making a really good salary. All those annual bonuses and the stock options and everything else, I would not have spent those on a house and a car and other nice things. I would have invested those. Um, and I had opportunities throughout the years to take money and invest it. And it was too risky for me. I didn't. For example, like in the US, the stock market or the housing market, uh, you know, really went under in the recession in 2009 or so. But I could have sold my house at the peak of the market in 2007 and taken that equity in my house and invested it, and that would have probably made me set for quite a long time. And I didn't do it because I owned my house and I was very wedded to the home ownership uh, and having a home base that was mine. Uh, and that was a huge mistake. And so I learned from that. I was like, don't be wedded to the things. You know, if it's a smart decision, get rid of the thing, take that money and do something with it, whether it's savings or investment, whatever. Um, but don't be married to one path for too long. So I would have made some changes earlier. I think I held on to a lot of things, both probably financially and emotionally, too long. I held on to being a corporate vice president and executive as part of your identity.
It becomes,
And
if you do it for a
yeah,
long time, and especially when people start relying on you and the businesses rely on you, it becomes part of your identity.
yeah, and it's an ego thing,
Yeah.
and it's a social thing. When you're out, people say, "What do you do?" And they're impressed when you say, "I'm an executive, and I do this and I do that." And as you get older, you don't care about impressing people so much anymore. I think that's important to when you are young, but at some point you shed all that, and it's more about are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you content? Are you a good person? That type of thing, rather than
Are you waking up happy in the morning and doing
yeah,
what you've always loved doing?
yeah, as opposed to putting on an acceptable
Yeah.
presence for other people.
Linda, thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Did I forget to ask you something that you think would be important and you would like to mention it?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think that what I would want most of the audience to know is especially in transitioning at a later age, is don't be afraid. I meet a lot of people who are afraid. They were afraid to travel. They were afraid to make a huge change in their life, whether it's personal or professional. And I think the first step is get over that fear. Just step out of it and don't let that hold you back. You'll be so much happier in the end.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you. It's lovely to speak with you.